What's going on, guys? Super Insane 18 here, and today I am bringing you a brand new deck profile for the Rescue Ace strategy. Now, this is a deck that a lot of people are thinking is going to be really good. Personally, I think the deck is okay, but once we do get a ban list, the potential of this deck skyrockets immensely, so definitely pick this up now before we get that ban list and these cards potentially jump up in price. So let's go ahead and show you guys the build. And before we get into the build, I do just need to give a really quick shout out to Stillbittercardco over on Instagram. Not only are they just amazing and awesome people, but they are the people that got me this deck to begin with. Without them, I would not be able to bring you guys this deck profile. They got it to me incredibly quickly and gave me an incredible deal as well, so make sure you guys check them out for all of your card needs. Starting things off with the Rescue Ace monsters, we have 3 copies of our Rescue Ace Hydrant. Now, this card feels like it has an infinite amount of effects. First off, as long as you control another Rescue Ace monster, your opponent cannot target this for battle or card effects, meaning there's just kind of an invincible monster on your field. Additionally, it also allows you to activate one of your Rescue Ace quick play spells or traps the turn that they were set, meaning that you can do some really cool and degenerate things with it. And on top of that, it also once per turn searches you for a Rescue Ace monster, giving this card just an incredible amount of utility. Next up, we have our Rescue Ace Impulse. This card does 2 things, the most important of which is going to be when your opponent activates a monster effect on the field. You contribute it from your field or hand and summon one of your Machine Rescue Ace monsters from your deck. Now, that works really well for some of the cards I'm going to show you a bit later, but also you are able to use its first effect, which is you are able to make your opponent unable to activate the effects of whatever monster they have with the highest attack. Now, let's say you're up against something like Pearly and the only monster that they have is the Nor. If you can successfully get the Impulse effect to resolve, that means your opponent cannot activate the Nor effect to bounce. Now, that works even if it's unaffected because that effect isn't affecting the monster, it's affecting the player. So the Nor would still be unaffected by your activated effects, but you're safe from them bouncing all of your cards. Next up, we have 3 copies of Airlifter. Now, Airlifter is arguably the most important one of the deck because it searches any of your Rescue Ace spells, which searches the brand new one out of DUNE, which is going to be Emergency. I'll explain that when we get there. It also has the other effect of being able to tribute itself from field or hand when your opponent activates a monster effect, and that will actually allow you to summon a Rescue Ace from your hand. So depending on what your hand is, it can also let you play on turn 0, just like Impulse. Next, we've got a couple of one-ofs. We have our Fire Attacker and our Fire Engine. Fire Attacker is more often than not the one I end up summoning off of the Impulse, because if your opponent draws, or adds a card from their deck to their hand rather, you get to draw 2 and discard 1, so you can dig for hand traps again on turn 0. And Fire Engine is able to summon a level 4 or lower Rescue Ace from your deck if your opponent summons as well. And both of these also have the effect of if they are in your hand and you summon a Rescue Ace monster, you can special summon them to your side of the field. Next up, we have 2 copies of Rescue Ace Preventer. This card can summon itself from your hand by banishing any of your Rescue Ace cards, and then when it leaves the field, it can summon one of your level 4 or lower Rescue Ace monsters that has been banished. But more importantly, while on the field, it is essentially a Book of Moon. As long as you control another Rescue Ace monster, you are able to just target a monster your opponent controls and put it face down, and we all know how strong Book of Moon is this format. Next up, we have our 2 copies of Turbulence. Turbulence is the heart and soul of the deck because this card is essentially a +4. You can activate its effect, and that will allow you to set up to 4 Rescue Ace quick play spells or traps from your deck, and then yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all that you need to know, is you just get to set 4 for free. It does have another effect of if another Rescue Ace monster leaves the field because of an opponent's card, you can pop a card on their field, but the more important effect is the set 4, because you will see how just disgusting some of these cards are further on into the deck profile. And then finishing up the monsters, we have our hand traps, which is going to be 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird, and then our 3 copies of Ash Blossom. These are just pretty much the standard generic hand traps that every deck is playing right now. You guys know my opinion on Ash, but when you can back it up with a lot of other things, then it definitely becomes a little bit more worth it. Droll and Lockbird is one of the most disgusting cards in the game right now, so you kind of have to play it. Onto the spells, we have a couple of one-ofs. We have our 1-for-1. This is able to just kind of get us into the Hydrant really easily. And we have our Reinforcement of the Army. It's a little bit risky when Droll is so prevalent this format, but you're able to use this to search for your Impulse or more likely your Airlifter, because Airlifter is a 1-card full combo. Then we have 3 copies of Book of Moon. Book of Moon is just a ridiculously strong card this format. I don't really need to explain it. We have our 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity. The extra deck for this deck is very fluid and you don't really need it that much. So having the ability to just dig for cards at the cost of your extra deck is Probably better in this deck than most. Like, you run Prosperity in most decks anyway, but it's a little bit better in this deck because of how little you actually need the extra deck. Which, speaking of, the extra deck is going to have quite a bit of Super Poly targets. Super Poly is just a ridiculous card, your opponent can't respond to it, you're able to fuse using only monsters they control as well. You can use either field, but more often than not you're trying to just snipe monsters off of their field, so really, really incredible card. Then we have some Rescue Ace cards. We have our Alert, which is kind of like a Rhoda, but it has to be from Graveyard. Unless you control Hydrant, then you can add from your deck. Just a little bit of a side note, all of the Rescue Ace cards gain additional effects if you control Hydrant. We have Rescue, which is a monster reborn for any of your Rescue Ace, or if you control Hydrant, you can reborn a card out of your opponent's graveyard, which is incredible. In a hero matchup at my locals, I actually use this to reborn my opponent's DPE, which is really, really cool. Then we have our Rescue Ace Headquarters. This card is also insane. All of your Rescue Ace monsters will gain 500 attack as long as your opponent controls a monster. You get an additional normal summon of a Rescue Ace monster every turn, but the most important part of this card is that you can target 4 Rescue Ace cards that are among the cards in your graveyard and banished, shuffle them into the deck, and draw 1. So you're kind of like using a Daigusto Emerald or like a Pot of Avarice to just recur your resources, and you can use it to just put back all of the spells and traps that you're just going to reset off the Turbulence, meaning that Turbulence is always going to be live. Then we have our 3 Emergency, which is new out of DUNE. This card is like an E-Telly for the deck. You are able to summon one from your deck at the cost of then tributing one from your field or hand, which you'll 9 times out of 10 be able to do, so it's not really that bad of a cost. And then its other effect is you can banish it from the graveyard to target one of your Rescue Ace traps and reset it to your side of the field, meaning that you are able to just recur them even if you don't have the Headquarters. Then finishing up the main deck, we have our Contain and our Extinguish. The Contain is like a mixture of Infinite Impermanence and Gnome material. You target a card your opponent or a monster your opponent controls, negate its effect, and it can't attack, but its additional effect if you have the Hydrant at resolution is you are able to then make it so that they can't use that monster for any of the extra deck type summons. It essentially just becomes a blank card on their field that they have no real way of getting rid of. And the Extinguish is like a mixture of like Raigeki Break and Called by the Grave. You're able to target a monster your opponent controls and destroy it, and then if you have Hydrant on resolution, they cannot use any monsters with that same name for the rest of the turn, so kind of acting like Called by the Grave. That is the main deck at 40 cards. Let's show you guys the extra. And before we get into the extra deck, don't forget guys, we have the Fusion Summer Fun double-sided metal field center available for purchase on my website, Insane TCG, link in the description down below. You can go ahead and get this amazing field center. It looks and feels incredible. It is a limited run of just 100, so pick yours up before they're out. To kick off the extra deck, we have some Super Poly targets. We have our copy of Mud Dragon of the Swamp. Not only is this just a good Super Poly target, but you're actually able to make it in your deck normally as one of the combos, which if you guys weren't aware, I will be making a fully dedicated combo tutorial for this deck, so make sure you are subscribed for that when it comes out sometime next week. We have our copy of Garura. This is just a really good Super Poly target as well. The Dragostapelia for anything that is playing fusions. And then we have the Draco Knight Draco Acquist. This is incredible for mostly Manadome, but it's really good against something like Dragon Link as well. Anything that's going to be putting up a Dragon Synchro and potentially a Baron, this is just a ridiculous card. And then we have our 1 copy of Linkuriboh and our 1 copy of Link Decoder. These are very important for just some generic combos. Again, I will show you guys that combo tutorial next week. We have our Proxy Magician. This is what actually allows us to summon the Mud Dragon normally. We'll use this effect and one of our Rescue Ace, which is also a fire, to make the Mud Dragon, and then the Mud Dragon can call fire, meaning that when we summon our Turbulence, they won't be able to use something like Effect Veiler or Infinite Impermanence to negate it. We have our Reproducus. Reproducus is what pairs with the Link Decoder. We'll be able to turn one of our monsters into a Cyberse and then go into the Link Decoder, which will just allow us to Link climb further. And then we have the 1 copy of Salamangreat Sunlight Wolf. This card's actually incredible because it lets you recur your fire monsters, so you are able to just get resources back from your grave for pretty much free. Not to mention, you can always just recycle Ash as well. We have a couple of Link 3s. we have the Protect Code Talker and the Topologic Trisbania. The Protect Code Talker is for a really cool turn 1 combo where you link up into a Link 5 that will prevent you from getting immediate loss to something like Harpy's Feather Duster, Lightning Storm, or Evenly. And the Topologic is mostly to get into access code really easily, but if you're up against something like Labyrinth, you can just use this to wipe their board, and it's kind of hilarious. Speaking of, we have the access code, which I just went over. Access code is access code. Making a 5300 attack monster that can nuke your opponent's board is pretty good. And then we have Firewall Dragon. Firewall Dragon's actually part of the combo. The Protect Code Talker that we have here is able to reborn itself if we have a Firewall, so that is how we link climb really, really high. And then the Firewall can also just recur stuff as well. When we reborn the Protect Code, we can make the Firewall co-link to it, and then we can bounce monsters from our grave back to our hand. That way we have recursion for the follow-up turn. Then we have our 1 copy of Neo Tempest Terahertz. This is the card that we are going into if we are doing the Protect Code Firewall line, because this is able to send us our copy of Desave Worm, and Desave Worm in the graveyard is just a spell trap negate, again making sure we don't lose to cards that would potentially nuke our back row, like the Harpy's Feather Duster, the Lightning Storm, the Evenly. Having this in the graveyard, make sure that we don't just get blown out by that. And there you guys have it. That is going to be my Rescue Ace deck profile. Again, I am bringing you a fully dedicated combo tutorial video next week on the channel, so make sure that if you liked it, you know what to do. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, like, comment, share with your friends. Maybe consider supporting me on Patreon. As always, make sure to check out the channel sponsor Dueling Guard using my code INSANE18 for 5% off your entire purchase. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.